Going on, everyone? There are a lot of questions looming around LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers and what will happen after the next coming season. LeBron James would be a free agent and he has the choice to go essentially anywhere. Now, I don't personally think LeBron is going to leave, but even if he did leave, they don't need to trade him necessarily this season because any team he wants to go to, he's going to need a sign and trade regardless because he's not going to go to like a Detroit or something along those lines. He's going to go to a team that puts him in a position to contend and win championships. Now, it's always a possibility that he goes to a team like New York who has cap space and maybe him and Bradley Beal can go together, something along those lines. But realistically, he's going to end up having to be traded, which means the Lakers will recoup assets. So there's no need to trade him this season. But let's explore some possible trades, some potentials, whether it's this season or next season. It's always fun to kind of speculate and go down these rabbit holes. And I do think that there are at least 5 teams that could potentially take LeBron James on, even at the age and twilight of his career. That's the other thing, too, when it comes to trades, is I don't think that there's going to be this huge lineup like it would have been 5 years ago, right? I don't think that you're going to have a ton of teams that are willing to risk a bunch of assets and things to get LeBron for a year or two and then he retires. But there are some contenders that I think maybe would, or some borderline contenders that maybe would add a chance just to get LeBron, and maybe he's the missing piece to win a championship. So let's dive into some of these trades. And jumping right into it, the first 2 trades I want to talk about are ones that LeBron threw out himself. Now, it wasn't a trade. It wasn't saying that he would go there, but it was 2 teams he said on the shop that would be an immediate impact if he was to go on those teams. And the first team is the Miami Heat. He could go back to Miami. And I think a trade for LeBron James to the Miami Heat wouldn't be as exceptional as maybe some of the other options on this list. So definitely stay tuned for those. But I imagine a package centered around LeBron would get back a Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and Kyle Lowry, maybe a draft pick or 2. Not just that, but Pat Riley would take LeBron in a heartbeat. So I think there may be some people that are like, why would they take LeBron? Jimmy Butler needs another star. LeBron is still another star. He's a guy that would fit in very nicely. And Pat Riley, LeBron was his guy. He was furious when LeBron left. He did everything he could to get LeBron James. And Pat Riley, personally, I think would take LeBron back if given the opportunity, especially if you can move off of Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry's contract. Now you free up the space, you get LeBron James, and you have to throw in Tyler Hero, who is a bench player, and there's many questions about him. I mean, there's even talks about Miami potentially trading Tyler Hero in this upcoming season just to get off him because they're going to have to pay him. So it would make sense you unload these 3 guys to the Lakers, maybe throw in a future pick, something along those lines, and then you get LeBron James, and you still have a quality squad. You still have a great squad. You probably still have, a little money to go and sign some other free agents. And Miami is essentially just pushing the chips to go all in. But next up, Golden State Warriors. Now, the Golden State Warriors are in a very interesting situation, whether they win the finals or not, because Andrew Wiggins' contract is looming. He's going to be, after next season, a free agent. Then you also need to pay Jordan Poole. So there's a lot of things that go into that they're going to have to make decisions for their future. But if you have the chance to get a LeBron James to win and compete for another championship, I think the Warriors would do it, right? Because the Warriors want to establish and continue to establish that dynasty. And they have enough pieces to where they could trade for a LeBron James and still have the depth, still have the talent, still have the skills. I mean, imagine a LeBron James, Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson. I mean, that's LeBron's dream. I mean, the Warriors are LeBron's dream team. It would be the perfect fit. You still could have Draymond Green. You could go and sign in free agency a cheap center. There is a just treasure trove of centers that they could go get. So I could see a package around Andrew Wiggins, Kuminga, and Wiseman. Now, of course, the Warriors, it would suck to lose Kuminga and Wiseman, but you got to give up something to get LeBron James. Wiseman didn't even play this last year, and the big question is how effective will he be on this Warriors team? Not just that, but how effective will he be due to the injuries when he missed an entire season? There's just a lot of questions and concerns with Wiseman. So I don't think there's really a huge loss there. Kuminga, he's a guy that has a lot of potential. He's 6'8" wing. He can play defense. He's a big body. He can score. I think that would be the biggest hurt, but you're immediately the best team in the league for the next at least 2-3 years or however long LeBron decides to stay in the league. I mean, I just don't see anybody beating them. I mean, it's Kevin Durant to the Warriors all over again. And so I think if the Warriors had an opportunity to do it, I think they would pull the trigger. I don't see any of the Warriors players going to the Lakers to team up with LeBron, but I think if LeBron wanted to go to the Warriors, I think they would welcome him open arms. And like I said, you're now a contender and the best team in the league for several years now. I mean, you're talking a super team, like super team. I mean, this might even be better than when Kevin Durant was on the Warriors because of LeBron's skill set, mindset, his ability to just make other players better, things like that. Where Kevin Durant became better because of the players around him. Everyone around him is going to become better because of LeBron James. But next up is a return to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, LeBron has talked about Cavs in the past and talked about how young and hungry, how great they look. They need not just LeBron, because, I mean, you could argue they don't need LeBron. Like, LeBron, they're a young team that's up on the rise. But what LeBron would give to the young Cleveland Cavaliers would be tremendous. I mean, his skill set, his mindset, his competitive drive, his experience, that veteran presence is something that the Cavs would hugely benefit from. And so I could see a trade around Sexton, who they have a lot of questions with him, right? They need to extend him, and they're kind of at a difference. It's not a huge difference. It's being reported that it's about a $4 million difference, so maybe they could work it out. But one option would be to just trade him, Kevin Love, and Karis LeVert for a LeBron James. Not just that, Karis LeVert, he's a free agent, so he may be able to go somewhere else after next season. So it's you're giving up pieces that you may even lose anyway. Kevin Love has already been relegated to a bench, so it's not a big loss there. Colin Sexton, you don't really need. I mean, he missed most of the season in the playoffs, and you were fine. You were still a really great team and showed that he's kind of just the other guy in many ways. And then Karis LeVert would be a tough loss, but you're getting a LeBron James in his place. LeBron's three-point shot has increased and just improved so tremendously that I just think it would be a great fit. LeBron can also retire a Cleveland Cavalier, which is something I'm sure he would love to do. And he just has his third stint. And with LeBron James, this team could very well be a contender. I mean, they have all the right pieces. They just need that guy to kind of bring them together, that has the experience, that has the drive, that could really take the young talent to the next level. And I think LeBron James is that guy in many ways. And you're not really losing much if you're Cleveland. You still have your Allen. You still have, all your key components, all your young assets that were very successful. And the reason you were successful last season, you still have them all. And LeBron gets to run with them. They can run a faster pace. LeBron can play off the ball, on the ball. It opens up so many possibilities for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I do think that this would make a ton of sense. Next up, the Brooklyn Nets. Now, Brooklyn got Kyrie. You have Kevin Love. And the big question is surrounding Kyrie Irving. Like, what's going to happen with Kyrie? Is he going to leave? Brooklyn seems all but done with him. But if Brooklyn could get LeBron James, and he is somebody that's won a championship with Kyrie Irving, understands Kyrie, connects to Kyrie. Kyrie has spoken very highly about LeBron lately. Imagine a team with Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. That would be unbelievable. That's the best team in the league. And, there's so many questions around Ben Simmons, right? Is he going to play? How is his mental state? Like, I don't think Brooklyn would lose anything. You're basically trading Ben Simmons for LeBron James. They're both essentially the same player, so you can lose LeBron. Bruce Brown, the junior, he's a tough loss, but he's not like some premier guy. He's a role player. He's older. I think he's 26, so he's not like, he's young, but he's not like, he's older for NBA standards. He's not some 22-year-old kid that has all this room to grow. I do think that he could get better, but I don't think he's going to get that. I don't think he's going to develop into a star immediately. He's undersized for the position and the skill set that he plays. He's not a lights-out three-point shooter. He can get hot. He can make threes, but he's a 3-and-D undersized player. Nick Claxton would be a tough loss, don't get me wrong, but you got Drummond, who you could re-sign. You could go get another young or mid-tier center. Like I said, there's a treasure trove of centers the next few off seasons that they could sign. So he would be arguably the biggest loss, but I think you're fine. And I do think that Ben Simmons, they don't need. They've gone without him. There's so many questions and concerns about him and his mental state and everything like that. You're basically trading him for LeBron James. I think you do that all day because I think Kyrie Irving, LeBron, and Kevin Durant are essentially a super team. Like, you're talking about a ridiculous team that just has everything. You don't even need, it doesn't even really matter who the other players are, but you'd still have guys like Seth Curry. You'd still have Joe Harris. Like, you have guys that can knock down the three, that spread the floor. You have Drummond who can play center. You're literally going all in if you're the Brooklyn Nets, which they have shown to do on several occasions. It hasn't worked out yet, But I do think, like, if you go get LeBron James, that works out. You get LeBron, I just think you're immediately the best team in the league, hands down. And, I know people will say, well, Kyrie and Kevin Durant got eliminated and swept, but this last season was just a mess. I mean, overall, for the Brooklyn Nets, with all the Kyrie drama, everything like that, they didn't have another guy that could really take over the game. Kyrie Irving wasn't that guy. I mean, he had games, but Boston literally just said, we're going to stop Kevin Durant and make everybody else beat us, and nobody else could beat him. And that was the problem. But you go get LeBron James, you can't do that no more. You can't just hone in on Kevin Durant because you got Kyrie Irving who can get 30. You got LeBron who can get 30. I just think it would be a nightmare. But the last team would be the Toronto Raptors. And my thinking behind this is very similar to the Cavs. You got this young up-and-coming team. Not just that, LeBron has the Raptors. I mean, the Raptors literally have nightmares about LeBron to this day, right? I mean, the Toronto Raptors' number one enemy banned in the country is LeBron James. And so the opportunity to go get LeBron, I think, would be huge for Toronto. Not just that, but they need a point guard. They need that facilitator. Pascal Siakam is kind of like the point forward, and he's great, don't get me wrong, but they need somebody that can kind of put all the components together. So if that were the case, you got to give up an OG Anunoby and likely a Gary Trent Jr. to match salaries and that talent. For the Lakers, I think that this would actually be a really good trade because they're both very young. They're kind of like your key pieces to grow and build for the future. You'd still have Anthony Davis, maybe even keep Russell Westbrook at that point. So I do think that this would be one of the better trades for the Los Angeles Lakers in a recoup for LeBron James. And you might say, like, why would they give up Gary Trent and OG? Because you have to give up something. You have to make salaries match. You have to do things along those lines. And they've already talked and had several negotiations on Gary Trent Jr. There was even words that this last season they were planning on trading Gary Trent Jr. So it's not really a huge loss there. OG Anunoby would hurt, but you're trading OG and them for LeBron. You're immediately a contender. You're probably the best team in the league. You still got Siakam. You still have Mobley. Like you still have, Scotty Barnes. You still have Scotty Barnes. You still have Pascal Siakam. You have LeBron James. You have all your other components. You're in a great position. You really are. I mean, you're fantastic. And the Raptors would be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league with this trade. The Lakers get two young assets to build for their future that they could kind of build around with Anthony Davis, maybe keep Russell Westbrook, or they'd have all the cap space. I mean, Lakers would have essentially, $50 million in cap space that they could go get another player. Maybe add a Bradley Beal to this. Gary Trent, Bradley Beal, OG, and Anthony Davis. You might not even have to rebuild. The Lakers may be able to just immediately be back in contention. So I think that these are all trades that could really make sense. I think that these are things that could happen. Like I said, I mean, all these trades, I'm sure some of them you're looking at and you're like, why would you give that up for LeBron thing? Because salaries have to make sense. And not just that, but either of these teams have to give up assets. But I don't think either of these teams are losing assets that are so significant that adding a LeBron James for a year or two completely implode your team. Because that's what any of these teams would be looking for. They'd be looking for, how can we get LeBron without just completely blowing the team up? And I think that this is a way, an approach in which they could go to do so. And all these teams would immediately become light years better with LeBron James. I think all these teams, if given the opportunity, would pull the trigger on these trades. I don't think any of these trades are unrealistic or don't make sense. I think they are all significant trades to get a LeBron James and likely compete for a championship for several years. And LeBron's history, every place he's gone to, Cleveland, LA, Miami, he's won a championship. So I think that is something that these teams would look for. End of the day, worst case scenario, you're putting butts in the seats and you're adding a bunch of money in revenue, which it is still a business. All these teams are still businesses. So the opportunity to make money on a LeBron James and jersey sales and ticket sales and all that stuff, it's a huge benefit even beyond just the trade packages and being a contender now with LeBron James. I just think that all these trades would be beneficial for all teams involved, all parties. I do think some trades are worse for the Lakers than others. I think the Lakers might not want to do some of these trades, but I don't think they're going to have a ton of power and pull if LeBron decides to leave, because he's going to say, I want to be traded to these teams. He's going to have a list of a handful of teams, and the Lakers are only going to have those teams to look up to get assets back. But I think that those assets would be relatively significant because they have to match salaries and they have to give something to get LeBron, and the Lakers are in a good spot. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What do you think about a LeBron James trade? Do you think, yeah, trade him now? Do you think, no, wait for the season to wrap up? Worst case scenario, you have like $80 million and then maybe explore a sign and trade for LeBron to one of these teams in the following season? Or do you think, no, you do whatever you can to keep LeBron James with Anthony Davis? You let Westbrook go. After Westbrook's gone, you have, $50 million to go get a Bradley Beal or something like that. And now the Lakers are a contender with LeBron, Davis, and Beal. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying it would happen or is going to happen, but, the Lakers would have money and the financial flexibility to go do that. Maybe LeBron even takes a pay cut or something to go get some real assets and try to push for, another finals 1 or 2 and maybe get a couple more rings out of it. I could see LeBron doing that, going the Tom Brady approach, whatever that may be. But either way, love to hear your thoughts and opinions on all these trades and just this conversation in general down in the comment section below. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.